Evil has a name, evil has a face. Evil is evil, and it doesn't discriminate. Across decades, from the shadows of suburban neighborhoods to the quiet corners of isolated highways, there have been killers whose name still sends chills down our spines. Ooh, what drives a person to take another's life? What makes a killer blend seamlessly into society? And their monstrous deeds hidden beneath a veneer of normality. Good Lord. In today's video, people, we explore 5 of America's most notorious figures whose crimes left an horrifying mark on the nation, from a charming clown with a dark secret to a cryptic killer who taunted the media. We, over here, we shall uncover the twisted stories of those who seem to vanish into thin air only to return with terrifying consequences. So people, I am your host, Bad Guy the Entertainer, aka Mr. Hate. Call me what you want to call me. Get ready, ladies. Margaret, I see you there, Margaret. Ladies, grab yourself a cup of tea. Make sure it's Yorkshire as we delve into history's chilling mysteries, one murder at a time. Join us on a journey through the shadows of true crime. One of the most chilling figures in American history, John Wayne Gacy, was an entertainer who wore the face of a clown. Known for his role as Pogo the Clown at children's parties, he hid a dark and monstrous secret, people. Good Lord. Let's continue the reading. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy's sadistic spree would claim the lives of 33 young men, most of them mere teenagers. Good Lord, people, this one likes them young and smooth. Anywho, in what would become one of the most infamous serial killer cases in American history. Anyway, it was the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Peace in December of 1978 that eventually led to Gacy's capture. Ooh, good Lord. Piecing together a trail of evidence traced the teenagers' last known moments to Gacy's doorstep. What they discovered next was nothing short of horrifying. 26 young bodies were unearthed from beneath his house. In a crawl space, Gacy had transformed into a gruesome tomb. 3 more victims were found on his property, while the remaining bodies were discovered in the nearby Des Plaines River. Good Lord. In 1980, Gacy stood trial, charged with 33 counts of murder. Despite attempting to mount an insanity defense, the prosecution's case was irrefutable. Good Lord. Gacy was convicted on all counts, and for his heinous crimes, the court imposed the death penalty for 12 of his murders. John Wayne Gacy was ultimately executed by lethal injection in 1994, killed the bastard, bringing a grisly chapter in America's criminal history to its tragic end. Ted Bundy, perhaps the most infamous serial killer of the 20th century, remains a name synonymous with terror and manipulation. Though Bundy confessed to the brutal murders of 36 women, many believe the true toll of his killings is far greater, with estimates reaching into the hundreds. Good Lord. Bundy. Look at him, people. Bundy, a man of unsettling charm and intelligence, just like me, ladies. I might kill ya. Just joking. Graduated from the University of Washington in 1972 with a degree in psychology. Described by those who knew him as a master manipulator, he's seen the picture of a well-adjusted young man, but beneath the surface, a chilling darkness lurks. His modus operandi was both terrifying and insidious. Bundy would feign injury, often pretending to be incapacitated or in distress, only to lure unsuspecting women into his trap. Once they were close enough, his strength and cunning would take over, leading to a horrific attack. Good Lord, people. Bundy's killing spree spanned multiple states, leaving a trail of fear and confusion as law enforcement struggled to connect the dots. His ability to slip through the cracks was nearly unparalleled. In 1975, Bundy was finally caught in Utah after a routine traffic stop led to his arrest. Good Lord. However, even in custody, Bundy proved elusive. People. He managed to escape from jail not once, but twice. Once in 1977, when he made a daring escape from a Colorado prison, and again in 1978, when he fled from a jail in Florida, continuing his killing spree in the Sunshine State. Let's continue this, people. But people, it was in Florida where Bundy's reign of terror would ultimately come to a violent and final end. In 1978, Bundy committed a series of gruesome murders, culminating in the brutal killings of 2 young women at Florida State University. This time, people, the law caught up with him. The law caught up with him, people. Bundy was arrested, tried, and convicted of the murders. Despite countless appeals and attempts to delay the inevitable, Bundy was sentenced to death. Good Lord, people.
Where's my yak? Oh.
Okay. In 1989, after years of legal wrangling, the state of Florida finally carried out his sentence. Ted Bundy, you demonic force, this demon here, people. Look at this demon. Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair like a piece of sausage frying in a sausage pan, bringing to a close the grisly chapter of a man who had shocked the nation with his unimaginable cruelty. Oh, people.
Where's my yak? Where's my yak? Oh.
The Zodiac Killer. Good Lord. One of the most infamous and elusive criminals in American history haunted Northern California in the late 1960s and early 70s, leaving behind a trail of victims and a legacy of terror. Despite the decades of investigation, the true identity of the killer remains a mystery to this day. This case, people, is one of the most bizarre and chilling in criminal history. Beginning in 1978, the Zodiac Killer targeted young couples. He likes them young, attacking them in remote areas. His methods was both brutal and people methodical, leaving no doubt in the minds of investigators that they were dealing with a cold-blooded killer. But what set this case apart and what continues to intrigue the public was the Zodiac's disturbing communication with the press. In 1969, the killer began sending a series of taunting letters to three major California newspapers, people. The San Francisco Chronicles, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Valley Joe Times Herald. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we don't give a damn over here. It's a newspaper, people. Look it up. Anyway, these letters was cryptic and threatening, often filled with symbols and puzzles that seemed to mock law enforcement's efforts to track him down. In some letters, the Zodiac claimed responsibility for several murders and even promised more carnage if his demands were not met. He insisted that his letters being published in newspapers, threatening to kill more victims if they were ignored. He is not playing about, people. He is a smooth ass serial criminal. God damn it. The killer's demands weren't limited to just media attention. He also included disturbing threats detailing how he would commit further murders if the letters were not taken seriously. The chilling part, people. The chilling part of all of this, he seemed to follow through on his threats, with several additional killings occurring after his letters were published. The Zodiac's communication continued through 1974, making his case one of the longest running unsolved serial killer mysteries in history. Good Lord, people. Where's Jesus? Jesus! We need your grace down here on earth, people. Demons walk amongst us. Let's continue the reading. Over time, police began to suspect that the letters might not all have been written by the same individual. The case became a complex puzzle, with investigators speculating that multiple copycats could have entered the fray, taking advantage of the public hysteria and attention. Despite this, the killer himself confessed to 37 murders in total, though police have only been able to verify 7 attacks, 5 of which resulted in death. The verified victims, all of whom were murdered in cold blood, became part of the Zodiac's grisly legacy. These murders, the ones that fit his pattern, remain among the most notorious in US criminal history. Despite numerous investigations, extensive media coverage, and multiple theories, the true identity of the Zodiac Killer remains a puzzle that has yet to be solved. In 2007, DNA testing and other technology advances provided some new hope, but this case, people, remains cold, as law enforcement has yet to make a definitive breakthrough. To this day, the Zodiac Killer's identity is a haunting enigma, and his crimes are a grim chapter in the history of American serial murder. Bind, torture, and kill. Dennis Lynn Rader. From 1974 to 1991, the Wichita, Kansas area was haunted by a series of chilling murders committed by a man who would come to be known as the BTK Strangler. The acronym BTK stood for Bind, Torture, Kill, people, a hauntingly accurate description of his methodical and sadistic killings. Over the course of nearly 3 decades, the city lived in fear as the identity of the killer remained a mystery, taunting authorities and the public alike. Good Lord, people. The first known victim of the BTK Strangler was a 15-year-old Joseph Otero. Lordy, whose life was taken in January 1974. The brutal crime, along with the subsequent murders of her family members, set the tone for the killer's reign of terror. The victims were often bound and tortured and left in such a way that left no doubt as to the predator's sinister motivation. Despite the investigation, the killings continued throughout the years, leaving the authorities stumped and the community on edge. What made the case even more terrifying was the killer's ability to toy with law enforcement. For years, BTK sent taunting letters to local newspapers, boasting about his crimes and mocking investigators. His letters were often cryptic and detailed, providing clues that both challenged police efforts and generated widespread fear. Fear amongst the community, people. Good Lord. His most infamous letters were sent in the late 70s and early 80s, in which he included gruesome details of the murders and even provided new insight into how he evaded capture. These communications were unlike anything seen in the history of American serial killers. And they fueled a sense of dread in the city. Good Lord, people.
Where's my yak? Oh.
Needed to take a drink for that. Good Lord, all this murder makes you thirsty, don't it? Anyway, for decades, the BTK Strangler identity remained unknown despite the killer's frequent correspondence, the press and police. But then, in 2004, after a long silence, BTK resurfaced. He sent a letter to the local media, making the beginning of his final act. This letter, along with a chilling package containing graphic details of his past crimes, would ultimately lead to his capture. What seemed like a new chapter in his reign of terror would turn out to be his undoing. People, demons walk amongst us anyway. Dennis Lynn Rader, a seemingly ordinary man living in Park City, Kansas, was arrested in 2005. His chilling confession revealed the full extent of his crimes. Over the course of 30 years, Rader had murdered 10 people. Carefully planning each attack and reveling in the control he had over his victims and the police. His arrest, a result of his reckless re-emergence in 2004. He got sloppy, people. He got sloppy. Shocked the community. It was revealed that Rader had been living right under their noses, serving as a leader in the church. Good God, demons are walking within churches. People, be careful when you go to church, and holding a position as an administrative and holding a position as a administrative worker in the city. Rader's trial was as chilling as the details of his crimes. He pled guilty to all 10 murders, and in 2005, he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole. The once elusive killer who had managed to evade justice for decades was now finally behind bars, serving out the rest of his life in solitude. His capture brought closure to the long unresolved case, but it also left a lingering question. How had Rader managed to blend into society for so long while hiding his true nature? Aileen Carol Wuornos, dubbed America's first female serial killer. One of the most notorious female serial killers in American history. Good Lord, left behind a trail of horror that still captures the public's imagination. Her story is as tragic as it is chilling, as Wuornos' murders exposed the darker undercurrents of a woman driven to violence by a life of abuse and torment. Wuornos was born in 1956 in Michigan, people, into a life marked by neglect and violence. Her mother abandoned her when she was just a young child, and Wuornos was raised by her grandparents. Early in her life, she faced unimaginable abuse, and by her teenage years, she had turned into prostitution to survive. She she had to sell that snatch people to put food on the table. Anyway, these traumatic experiences would go on to shape her troubled psyche and lead her down a path of destruction. In 1989, when Ros was in her 30s, she was young and beautiful, she began her killing spree. Over a period of 12 months, Ros murdered 7 men along Florida's highways. The circumstances surrounding each death were eerily similar. Ros, while working as a prostitute, would lure her victims into her car. She'd be like, come get this pussy. You know you want this pussy. $10 for this pussy, she said. Once in a vulnerable position, she would overpower them, often shooting them at close range. Some of the victims' bodies were later discovered in remote areas, stripped of valuables. Ros claimed that the men had attempted to assault her and that she had killed them in self-defense. Her reign of terror went largely undetected until 1990, when a crucial break in the case came. In November of that year, a police officer discovered the body of one of Ros' victims. As investigators pieced together the evidence, they soon began to link the deaths to a single perpetrator. They're gonna catch the bitch. But what shocked authorities was that the killer was a woman. Something unheard of at the time. People. Ros' arrest in January of 1991 was the result of a tip from her former lover, Tyria Moore, who had helped Ros evade capture for a time. Once in custody, Ros initially denied involvement in the killings. However, after hours of interrogation, she eventually confessed, claiming that she had killed the men in self-defense during attempted assaults. Her story was one of survival and emotionally charged narrative of a woman pushed to the edge by years of violence and trauma. The case gained national attention, not only because of the brutality of the murders, but also because of the complex psychology behind them. Ros' defense team argued that she had been a victim of circumstances, her troubled past, her life as a prostitute, and her ongoing mental health struggles painted a grim picture. She believed she was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, people, from years of abuse, while others felt her actions were rooted in a deeper rage and hatred for men. In 1992, Ros stood trial for the murder of Richard Mallory, the first of her victims. She was convicted and sentenced to death. The following year, she was convicted of 6 more murders. During her time on death row, Ros became a highly publicized figure. Her case sparked debate about the death penalty, female offenders, and the intersection of mental health and criminal behavior. Aileen Ros This lady right here, people, this lady right here was executed by lethal injection on October 9th, 2002 at the Florida State Prison. She was 46 years old. In her final moments, people, she made a controversial statement saying, "I just like to say I'm sorry for all the people I've done wrong to." Whether her apology was sincere or simply another part of the complex persona she had crafted throughout her life remains a subject of speculation.
She